In Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, there lies a cemetery for Creek Indian freedmen, the tribe's former black slaves. It's neglected and becoming a dumping ground.
Yes, this is one of the Benjamins.
When Rhonda Grayson first heard about it, she didn't get very far in her inquiries about who owned this plot of land.
And when I received the second call, I said, this is the ancestors calling us, and we have to do something.
Not only did she find the owner, she managed to acquire the land on behalf of the Creek Indian freedmen. Now she's begun work on restoration and an accounting of who's buried here.
Now, this is Rebecca Johnson, born July 4th on Independence Day, 1865.
At the recent commemorations for the centenary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, black Native Americans are a strong presence. And as with the massacre of 1921, many in the US and elsewhere aren't even aware of their existence. Some Native American tribes long accepted black members. But in what's now Oklahoma, white settlers judged the tribes civilized because not only did they assimilate with the newcomers in dress and religion, but also in the adoption of black chattel slavery. After the Civil War, the tribal nations abolished slavery as part of treaties signed with the federal government in 1866. Former slaves would be fully integrated and now known as freedmen. And there was full integration and intermarriage. Ligas Chotu Perryman even served as the principal chief of the Creek Nation between 1887 and 1895.
We know that America Cohee was born in 1888. She is an original enrollee of the Muskogee Creek Nation.
Rhonda Grayson's great grandmother lived her whole life as a member of the Muskogee Creek tribe. But then in 1979, the Creek passed new laws decreeing that freedmen were no longer tribal members. The other tribes followed. Freedmen would lose their tribal voting rights as well as their housing, health, and other benefits.
Everyone should be outraged that this could happen in 1979.
Tribes argued it was an expression of their sovereignty. An 1866 treaty with the US government should not be the final say on who was a member of their tribes. They should be.
Sovereignty is fine, but sovereignty does not give you the right to discriminate against the people. And that's essentially what's happening.
Grayson, who's been leading efforts to overturn the new laws, sees other motivations.
It's about greed and it's about racism is the core of the entire issue. That's it.
Efforts to pressure the tribes to reverse their exclusionary policies have been successful in the courts. In 2017, the
Salute, salute from the hood to the woods. Big time salute, yummy salute.
Cherokee Nation was forced to abandon plans to expel its freedmen.
Cherokees are people, and unfortunately in this world, there's still people who are racist. I think the vast majority of Cherokees are not.
The US Congress is getting involved, threatening to withhold funding if other tribes don't reverse course. And it seems to be working. Some say they will open a dialogue on the issue. But it is fraught. On the face of it, the federal government is overtly intervening in tribal affairs. However, since a Supreme Court ruling in 2020, the tribe's arguments for excluding freedmen have become shakier. The Muskogee Creek tribe argued for autonomy from the federal government. Its basis, the 1866 treaty with the federal government. And the tribe won. But it's that same treaty that gave freedmen full rights as tribal members.
Bioma Edwards.
The Creek are Grayson's tribe, and she's determined that freedmen members, both living and dead, will soon be able to reclaim their identity. Shia Bertansi, Al Jazeera, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Light, salute, salute.
Kelly, a former NASA astronaut, and I'm on a mission to help your
From the hood to the woods, you heard me? Now y'all see? Y'all see? I'm telling y'all. I'm trying to tell y'all. Even the so-called people we call the Indians or Native Americans is racist. That's crazy. How they racist against their own people? I'll tell you. And they said they changed that law in 1979. I was born in 1978. That's crazy. I'm telling you, man, it's something they ain't telling me. Listen, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, ladies and gentlemen. This something they ain't telling us. So you telling me in 1979? So you telling me in 1979, these people was told that they're no longer natives? So they've been natives from what they said slavery from the 1600s all the way up to 1979. And then out of the blue, one day, whoop, like that's crazy. Are you serious? Where they do that at? Here. How you gonna tell people they not something they was for 200 years? This shit is like comedy. If you really think about it, that's imagine somebody came to you and told you not what you are. No, they already did that. Oh, my bad. Oh shit. Yeah, where they do that at? Here. Oh, this shit is getting real spooky. I feel like I'm in like the Twilight Zone. I feel like I'm like I was born into this to this shit. Like this is crazy. How could it be a big conspiracy? Like what is they trying? What they trying to cover up? Like how could it be some? How could a whole government, a whole nation, and not only the nation, people, it's other nations around the world who help them with these lies. Like, what's the big deal? Like, I'm telling you, this shit is different, ladies and gentlemen. This shit is different. Right. Right. And it's funny because I don't be believing this shit, but just like maybe it's cause I'm only finding shit like this because maybe that's what I'm looking for. Because I'll be like, yo, I'll be thinking shit a certain way, and then I stumble upon some evidence that reinforces what I was thinking. Like I'm like, yo, that's why I said all praises to the Most High. Cause this shit is crazy. Like I'm a hood nigga from the Bronx. You feel me? I'm not no motherfucking what you call them people? Smart people, eggheads. What you call them? And then it's like it's so simple to me, but to other people, it's like it's a simple question, but then it's like complicated. Like it's a simple question, but people give me the most complicated answer. Historian, uh, historian. Yeah, but it's more than history. It's like like one of those people who be knowing stuff, like one of those egghead people. You know what I'm saying? Is it a scholar? Scholar, some type of shit? I don't know. But yeah, I ain't none of those things. I remember the day I left high school. I didn't even finish high school, Like, I remember my last day of high school. It was the first day of high school. It was the first day. That had something for y'all youngsters who don't know what this is. It was something called a Discman. It's like a Walkman. For those who don't know what a Walkman is, I don't know, but it's probably like an iPod, something like an iPod. So I had my headphones on. Y'all know what headphones is. So I'm listening to my music, and a homeroom teacher told me either turn off the music, take the headphones off, or leave their class. So I got up, I left the class, and I was like, damn, I don't got nowhere to go. Then I just left the whole school, Then I went home. My mom was like, what you doing? Why you back there? I was like, I'm not going back to school. I would say the end, but I can't tell you the rest. But yeah, that was my last day, man. I remember that. So I said that to say, man, I don't be knowing shit. But when I do the research, I be stumbling upon shit. So all praises to the Most High, because that's where, this information, I don't know. But like I said, this is only a theory. But my theory is that when these people came over here, it wasn't just a bunch of white people that came. And the white people wasn't all free, and the black people who they came with them weren't all slaves or servants or prisoners of war or whatever you want to call it. You feel what I'm saying? Now, somewhere in between so-called 1492 and 1776, right in between there, that's where the shit is. Yeah, that's where it gets spooky at right there. That's what people need to focus on. Between 1492 and 1776. Now, 1776 just happens to be the year of, the Revolutionary War, 1775, 76. And May 1st, 1976 just happens to be the day the Illuminati was started. You feel me? Like the real, not the real Illuminati, but the Germanic Illuminati. And not this not this Numinati is what I call it, Numinati, not this bullshit. You feel me? So all of that shit right there, man. In between there, like the revolution, like that, the Revolutionary War sparked revolutions, in Europe too. You feel me? So, and that revolution, what happened? Like, what really happened, man? You feel me? What really happened? What's the real story? You see, the revolution, what happened? The America, right? The British colonies, 13 colonies, the 13 British colonies rebelled against the British crown, which is supposed to be from Europe, right? But they had allies, different people was their allies, like I think France and different people like that. And they had their revolutions later and all that, right? So these 13 colonies, now from 13 colonies, 1776, this is when they say black chattel slavery started. It was only 13 colonies. Now it's 50 states. So that means everything outside of those 13 colonies was not a part of America or the British colonies. So that means slavery wasn't everywhere. Because it's 2 continents and some Caribbean islands. And on top of that, there's still places in the Amazon and things of that nature that they haven't even found yet. So see, now which brings me back to my theory. How did they bring all of these white people over here, plus black slaves with them, and then they probably brought thousands, right? Say they brought thousands of people with them. Most, a lot of them were slaves, right? So now they got over here. How did they take over this whole thing? It's millions of people over here on 2 continents and some Caribbean islands. There's millions upon millions of people here that's been here for thousands of years. Where did they get their army? Who was fighting their army? You think all the people, the millions of people over here was just united together as one people? You didn't think they was already had their own little squabbles and fights and things of that nature that was going on over here before these people came over here and probably aided some of these people and made them a little more powerful or helped both sides destroy each other like they do over there, like they do in other countries to this day. Through politics and things of that nature. Because you want me to believe they came over here with boats, cannons, horses, and slaves and took over 2 continents and some Caribbean islands. All in a span of how long, what? 300 years? That's how long it took you. Yeah, it's difficult to believe. I know it's something wrong with it. It's something wrong with it. And the reason I say they could not have been racist and all the slaves could not have been black is because they believed in El Christos Negros, Jesus. Like, how could you how could you be a bunch of white people who hate black people but your Lord and Savior is black? To this day. And when they got over here, the black people who came with them, right? The people who was over here, they said was black, right? So how, if everybody mixed in over 300-400 years, how we know who came from Africa, who came from Europe, who came from Asia, and who was native here in America? Let's just say, assume everybody who's black and all that came from slaves from Africa. Let's just assume that. That's easy. It's easier to do that. Well, it might be easy, but this shit is right here. This is talking about me. I want to know what the fuck is going on with me. You feel me? I don't know about nobody else. Now you got $5 Indian. You know what a $5 Indian is? Now you got. Oh my God. Like how much? Like damn. Who else we gotta fight to? I swear. We got people who's not even natives telling us that we're not natives. I'm telling you, man.
Hello. The new guy. Tell me about this epic stuff with this pizza. Late 1800s, there was something called the Dawes Rolls, which was basically a census that made records of people's ethnic background. In the late 1800s, there was something called the Dawes Rolls, which was basically a census that made records of people's ethnic backgrounds in order to determine which Native American tribes would get certain land allotments and other benefits. After slavery, many Black people were associated with some of these tribes by bloodline, through marriage, through adoption, and even servitude. And because they were associated with these tribes, many Black people were entitled to some of these benefits. The government did not want Blacks to get these benefits, so they created a separate freedmen's list specifically for Black people. They also started to list any full-blooded Native American who had African features as Black because they didn't want them getting those benefits either. At the same time, they allowed white citizens to come in and pay money under the table to be listed as part Native American.
1895, 1896, when a lot of the whites found out the benefits that these Indians, that these blacks are going to be entitled to, a lot of whites went to the Dawes Commission and say, look, why don't you put my name on there? They said, but you're not an Indian. So that's what they said, well, I'll give you $5. So the rule got around, the policy got around that for $5, that a white could put his name on the Dawes rolls and be called himself an Indian and be entitled to all these benefits, and all their children could be entitled to all these benefits forever. And so that became known as what's called a $5 Indian. And so if you go around now and check most of the Indians, the so-called Indians in America, about 90% of them are not even Indians. Those are just whites now who are passing as Indians. But they're getting all the benefits. And they're not paying any taxes, getting free college education. They put up a little reservation on the land that they don't live on. They have another home off and get all kind of benefits.
Iron Eyes Cody was another famous Native American person. He was in the media for years. In the 1970s, they utilized him for this pollution commercial. He was known as the Crying Indian. So he was a very well-known Native American in American culture. But the reality is, Iron Eyes Cody wasn't Native American at all. He was Sicilian. Both of his parents were from Sicily. So he didn't have one drop of Native American blood in him. He was another fake Indian.
Now you see what he said. Now he said some of the natives with black features were not not classified as Indians with black features. You see what he said? Some of the natives with black features, right? Okay, remember that.
I had no idea you could find this much on Ancestry.
This is my mom's yearbook pictures from high school.
Welcome to Real Black Content Forum Podcast. This is Big VJ checking in. Today's conversation, we're going to talk about some history, right? We are going to talk about some history, and in this conversation, we're going to identify Black folks that was living in the Americas prior to the slave trade, right? Prior to Columbus, quote unquote, finding and discovering this place, right? There was pockets and areas in the Americas where Black folks was already at, right? They were already here, already had communities, already had small colonies, already had a language and a culture, everything, right? So we're going to have that conversation. You know, here on Real Black Content Forum Podcast, we do this, right? Because oftentimes when you get around Black folks in America, it's like an all or nothing kind of like mentality, right? It's weird. I don't even know where we get it from, but it's like an all or nothing. So normally you deal with a Black American, he's all African all of a sudden. He's looking up Igbo and Yoruba stuff, and he's Ashanti and all this. He's all African. He's never been there, but he's all African, right? That's one side of the spectrum, right? The real Afrocentric brother. He got the dashikis. He loves Wakanda. He's not going to go to Africa. He's not going to buy no property. He's not going to do none of that. But he, you know, like he's all in. He's all African, right? If you let him tell it. Then we got another end of the spectrum. There's another community, and everybody's all Aboriginal. They ain't got nothing to do with African. They ain't got no African blood. They don't know much about slavery. They don't really they act like slavery never happened. They act like the slave trade never happened. Then you got young blood running around telling folks that 98% of African Americans is Indians and all this kind of, it's crazy, right? But it's one end of the spectrum. Everybody's all African. Or it's the other end of the spectrum. Everybody's all Aboriginal, right? The slave trade never happened. My grandmama's Indian and all this, right? You know, Big Mama said she was Indian. And then we got another end of the spectrum where another group of people in our community is saying, well, we are Hebrews and we live underneath these curses and all this and this. So it's like it's an all or nothing thing that Black folks play in America, right? Well, what we learned here on Real Black Conscious Forum Podcast is that Black Americans is a mixture. We're mixed breed people. We got a lot of genetic lines. It happened that way because of our sojourn on the plantations in this country, right? So the truth of the matter is that Black Americans is a mix. We're mixed with African. We're mixed with Black Aboriginal. We're mixed with Red Aboriginal. We're mixed with East Indians. So we got a running joke on this platform. You know, when the devil called America a melting pot, he wasn't lying. He was not lying. When he say America's a melting pot.
Well, I'm sorry. I have to disagree with the brother right there. I have to disagree with the brother only on the point that if you mix with anything from a native place, you become that you become that people. You feel what I'm saying? So, like to say, Black people are mixed with all types of people from everywhere, you can have that argument any place on this planet. Any type of people are mixed with people from all types of places because people travel and migrate, and they've been doing it for thousands, even maybe millions of years. But what I'm saying is we're here in what they call America. So if people came over here and mixed with us, they're a part of us. Now, if we went somewhere else, if we went to Africa and we mixed with them over there, after generations go down the line, we'll become Africans. And they'll say, we're mixed with anything else that we came into the place with. So, I understand what the brother is saying, But like I said, man, you call Obama our first black president, but he's mixed, isn't he?
He wasn't lying, but the only thing is about that, right? The catch is he wasn't in the pot. You're in the pot. You're melting and mixing of it, not him. He's white. He gonna stay so-called white. That's what it is. But you're in the melting pot, right? So what we have to do typically on this platform, right, when we have conversations, everybody's cool with the African piece, and we kind of struggle with the Hebrew and the Aboriginal piece. So I come to the table and I bring sources that show that black folks was indeed in the Americas prior to the slave trade. But I can't use all the sources I want to use. They have to be written by devils because black folks is more receptive to information when you show them that so-called white folks wrote it. You know, I can show you a bunch of black scholars that talked about the subject matter for the last past 100-something years. I can just bring them on, but it just won't go over. But when I bring in some documents and I say, look, these devils wrote it, and I show you the dates and times and all that, then we kind of like, man, is that really happening? Yeah, it happened, bro. And normally on this platform, the documents that I use is from the 16th, 17th, 18th century, 19th century also. Very rarely 20th century, though. We got a document today. It's 20th century, early, though, 1901. It was, I rarely even use these kind of documents.
Okay, now for those who don't know, when he says devils, I believe he's talking about white people. But when I say devils, yeah, devils did write that, not because they were white, because they were deceitful. They just happened to be white.
To be totally honest, because see, there was a time in this country black folks couldn't read, right? There was a bunch of anti-literacy laws. You know, you couldn't read. You was a person of color, it was illegal for you to read, which means that when certain documents and books was published during that time frame, right? It's not like somebody was writing something to pour something over your head because you couldn't even read. They ain't lying to you. They ain't trying to put something in the book to trick you up. You couldn't even read anyway. Whether you could is in the book or not, you couldn't even read. And nobody never foresaw one day you would pick up those old documents, right? I'm a stickler on that. I pick up the stuff and read that we wasn't reading, and when we was able to read,
all right, no disrespect, my brother. Let's try to get to the information.
Washington, right? So this comes off the floor of government. I want you to see the source. I want you to take a real good look at everything that's here. Right? Report of the Industrial Commission on Agriculture and Agricultural Labor, including testimony with review and topical digest thereof. Volume 10, Washington, 1901. Then they got the members of the Industrial Commission. You can see the senators that's listed. You can see the chairman that's listed. You can see the secretary that's listed. So this is real deal, you know, as we say on the blog, this is official tissue, right? But we're going to go down to page 824, right? Let's go to page 824. We're going to dive right in. While we're at page 824, we're going to back up just a little bit. So can I blow it up? Maybe you can see it a little better if I blow it up. We're going to back up just a little bit to the bottom section of 823. And if I can give you a little backdrop, you know, they're on the commission. This is government, of course. And, you know, during this commission, they're talking about race relations, they're talking about different industries, what's profitable, what's not. They're talking about the work ethic of black people and white folks and who should be given the chance to work more in this industry or this manufacturing plant or this sector of government. And then they have on the other side, you know, so they're just having a real deal conversation and it's all documented, right? So once something comes on the floor of government, that's going to be a piece of history forever. Now, nobody's necessarily hiding this from you. This came on in 1901, and then we had a small bubbling number of our people being educated. But even with that being said, the sharecropping and the working from sun up to sundown, and it's funny on the books. So on our, you know, on our spare time, we're not picking up and reading the hearing before the Industrial Commission. It's just not happening. We're not doing it. It's just not a reality. Because again, we're talking about black folks that was in the American, right? So this is the question and answering portion, of course. I mean, this is what happened on the floors of government.
I'm writing an essay, and it requires some shut mouth.
Don't waste your time on those junkyard losers. This country was built on genocide and slavery. We killed all the black guys that were here, and then we shipped in new black guys of our own. We killed all the black guys that were here, and then we shipped in new black guys of our own.
Now, let's see if we can work a little magic with all this noise.
I can't believe that happened.
So we get page 823. We're in the last paragraph. And it says, I want to quote an extract from the book entitled Race Problems of the South Montgomery Conference. Alfred Morwado is the speaker, and he is referring to the situation in North Carolina respecting the Negroes. He says, now we have page 824. This is the hearing before the Industrial Commission. Crimes of all sorts increased alarmingly and went unpunished, right? So let me just give you a real quick synopsis of this paragraph. What they're talking about is two different natures between black folks. In this next paragraph, they're going to talk about the nature of black folks in North Carolina. They're going to say they was drunkards. They didn't even make good jurors. Anytime you put somebody on the case, if it's a black person, he did something crazy, other black folks is not going to find him guilty. They're going to say he's innocent. They don't throw each other under the bus in the legal system. They're going to talk about Negroes being drunken and walking the streets all day, partying all day, being idle. They don't want to work. They are insulting the women of that town. They're robbing in broad daylight. They're fighting in broad daylight. They own their own media. They have a Negro newspaper, and the Negro newspaper is running down white folks and white women. They don't care nothing about nothing. These Negroes is free. They cannot be controlled. Then he goes on later to talk about how white supremacy had to get these Negroes back in order, right? So if you just ask me, when he made that statement about how white supremacy had to get these Negroes in North Carolina back in order, I would suspect he's talking about the insurrection in Wilmington, and that happened right around, I want to say, 1895 between 1890, right, to be on the safe side. You can look it up, probably on Wikipedia by this point. Everything's on Wikipedia, right, where they had like, it was a mob of white folks that attacked black folks, black-owned businesses, and they killed a lot of our people to the tune of maybe like 16 between 200. That's a big gap. I know you like 60 to 200. Yeah, I know. That's a big gap, but that's how it's recorded, right? We're going to go right into the second paragraph because there's a lot of information in this second paragraph that we're going to have to build on. It says a large Negro population on the coast of South Carolina is quite different from this here described. The mayor of Beaufort says the town is remarkable for quiet and good order. For 20 years past, not a single individual has been killed or seriously injured in any disturbance within corporate limits. See Handbook of South Carolina, page 663. This is a statement of the mayor of Beaufort, and Beaufort is perhaps the blackest spot in the whole South. That is to say, the Negro population predominate more than anywhere else. There is a peculiar history fact connected with that town that I would like to mention to the commission. So now the speaker is setting the stage at this point, right? He talked about two different kind of natures. The Negroes fresh off the plantation in North Carolina, they're running rampant, right? They all over the place. You can't control them. Then you got a different group of Negroes in South Carolina. And these different group of Negroes, they live in the same area that's connected with a different people that used to live there before that was Negroes too. And he just want to give the commission the history on these people. That's what he's finna do. He's finna go right into it, but he took his time. He set the stage, right? So let's continue. That is the place where the federal troops first set the Negroes free. It was done on those islands in the neighborhood of Beaufort, and they are now there the predominant race. And this mayor refers to them as a quiet community. A most peculiar thing is Cortefagase in his book on the human race asserts the fact that the African lived on these islands long before the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. He is a high authority, and he says that the Yamasee Indians were Negroes, what were known afterwards as the fears of the Indian tribes of the South. The well-known Yamasee Indians were Africans. Okay, so we have to really stop and build on that. They say your history is hidden, but if your history is hidden, it's hidden from those who's already lost. The speaker comes out on the floor of government. Now, we're talking about some serious business. They're not shooting a bobo on the side of the corner on some street in Baltimore, Detroit, or Chicago.
Okay, now I just want to say real quick. They said the Yamasee Indians are Africans. I just want to know how they know that. Did the Yamasee Indians tell them they was from Africa, or did they assume that?
Or New York City, or Atlanta, they're not shooting a bobo. They're not in Kansas City just hanging out, just talking. This conversation, this commission that they're speaking to, this is happening all in the halls and the chambers of government in the United States of America. So we know everything that happens is going to be documented. So we're reading what's been documented, right? The speaker comes out to say, to give the history on this portion of land in South Carolina, not only South Carolina, the smaller surrounding areas in South Carolina. And he's saying that Africans live in this area, South Carolina, prior to the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. So wait. Let's stop. We got to have that conversation because
Oh yeah, I want to say yeah too. My people was from South Carolina. Yep, South Carolina Indians is what they call them. This is what my people look like. I don't know what everybody else people look like, but
because they didn't teach us that in public school, right? The Afrocentric guys, telling you about.
Oh, I also want to add that if the Yamasee, the native, so-called black Indians over here was from Africa, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have called it Africa because they wouldn't have known of that name. I'm just putting that in there. Oh. And one more thing. I don't want to look like I'm hating on the brother. But the first people over here was black, is what they saying. So I don't know if they came from Africa, but I think this was like over 12,000 years ago. So maybe they passed down stories. I don't know. I'm just adding that there too.
I came in every 5 minutes and talk about, black folks and slavery and all of that, which is, that's okay. That's all good. I'm not hating on nobody. But they never told you that there was black folks that could pass for Africans that lived in South Carolina prior to Christopher Columbus.
Okay, wait a minute, my brother. Wait a minute. Just got a little confused right there. He said there were black folks who could pass for African, or were they African? Because you got to remember, these people are coming from the old world, so all they got to liken people to is, I guess, what they call Africans. I don't know, but like I said, it's Berber Africans who's white, and they've been there for thousands of years before these people came over here. So I don't know if all Africans were African and black were the same word back then. I don't know.
even discovering quote unquote America. Right? What is the date associated with Christopher Columbus? 1492? You know, that's the little nursery song that they give you when you're a young adult and you're in school. You say, yo, 1492, Christopher Columbus, this devil sailed the ocean blue. Right? 1492. So did we know as a community of Black folks in the village, in the camp, Black Americans, did we know though that Black folks was documented and seen in the Carolinas prior to Christopher Columbus even discovering this place that we know as America? Did we even know that? I'm willing to suspect many of us don't even know that. How many of you guys' family is from the Carolinas? Maybe that's a better question.
Me. Right here. Uh-oh, I'm about to get some answers, I think. Hold on, y'all.
How many of you guys' family from the Carolinas? Here's something that you have to really consider as well. If Black folks is being recorded as being in South Carolina before Christopher Columbus, right? They lived in the area. They lived on those small islands right outside. So that's 1492, way before 1492. Then you get the first slave trade they teach us about. What is that? 1619, Jamestown, Virginia, right? 20-something odd Africans. And then
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to add 1619. Those shipwrecked Africans that was brought over here were not slaves, they were indentured servants. And then they later got their freedom. Just wanted to say that. Oh, one more thing. Black chattel slavery, what we all is being taught now, that started in 1776. In some states, it was a little earlier. I can't say states, I mean colonies, because it was still 13 colonies. Okay.
you get the Yamasee War in 1715. It lasts for maybe 2 or 3 years, right? And then you get the first United States Census happen when? I want to say 1780, something like that. Don't quote me on that. You know, I should have maybe wrote some notes. Don't quote me on that. But I'm just off the top of my head, I want to say 1780, maybe 90. Let's say for good measure, late 1700s, the census. Okay, so these Yamasee Indians, which has already been called African, we know instinctively, right? Because we study history. These Yamasee Indians did not self-identify as Africans. They never got nothing in their history. They said we came across the Atlantic. They're just Black, so they threw the African label on them, right?
Okay, my brother, my bad. I apologize, my brother. Keep that shit.
But when it's time to do the census in the Carolinas, what do you think they mark those Yamasee Indians as?
Negro.
What do you think they labeled them as on that census?
Negro.
You think they put them as white? We know they didn't put them as white. You think they put them as Indian?
Negro.
Or do you think they put them down as Negro? Right?
Number 3.
That's a good question. You know, I always ask a bunch of questions because questions bring forth information.
Right.
It's a relative question to the conversation that we're having. What do you think when the census came around? Where did they put these Yamasee Indians that they was Africans? According to the writer, according to the speaker, they got their labels on, and they were well known. They're well known Yamasee Indians because of the Yamasee War. But did you even know the Yamasee Wars was Black folks, was Black Indians, Negro Indians fighting the British? Did you even know that?
Says he's Chuck Berry.
Let me see some ID. All right, then. ID.
This license says you're Indian. What the hell are you?
Well, I'm a musician, and my name is Chuck Berry. And I can be whatever you need me to be to play in your fine establishment this evening.
With the timeless protection of ADT, it's safe to say...
Hey, Google, unlock the front door.
When you...
You know, because ever since we've been in grade school, every February in the United States of America, we have Black History Month, and they go right into slavery, right? We hear about all these, I mean, you know, everybody came over on the ship from Africa and all of that, and that's a piece of history. And then every holiday they put Roots on. So we sit around and watch Roots like it's a real piece of history. Even though, you know, we learned later that Alex Haley, he swagger jacked the whole thing. Like, we didn't know he was swagger jacking at first. We thought it was his family. It was a real piece of history. And then we found out that when we do the leg work on Alex Haley, like, we said, damn, bro, you a whole Cherokee. Like, how did the Cherokee Indian write something about Kuti? But see, he stole that story from a Jew. See, and he had to pay like half a ticket for that, right? He had to do that. But see, we're going back to the document that we have in front of us. And just, again, keep in mind that this was the conversation that took place on the floor in the chambers of American government. And I got to read it again in case you missed it. It said that the Spaniards found that one Negro was equal to 10 Indians for work. And they therefore imported these. What kind of Indians did they import? The speaker said Indian Negroes. And he carried them to West Indians to experiment with. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We didn't know there was some Indian Negroes that went to West Indies. We didn't know that. Because we thought everybody who was black came from Africa. See, we didn't know that. And guess.
You see, I was thinking that before. I was thinking like, how did, this is just what I was thinking. How did Columbus only go to the Caribbean and call it the West Indies, but he never came to North America, but we have North American Indian. Maybe these North American Indians came from the West Indies. That's why they was called Indians. I don't know. Just a thought.
Guess what? Here's a real kicker. See, it's a reason on this platform I use certain type of documents. Because black folks got it in their mind that, hey, listen, you know, they put that there to fool you. They put that there to trick you. And beloved, I can assure you, they not talking to you. It's not for you. Go get that good book. Get to work. If they hand you any book, that's the book you did get. Nobody in the early 1900s was getting off that plantation because our folks are still in the plantation. We just moved to, those are sharecropping days at this point, right? So we working still sun up to sundown, and he's being funny with the books. He's making it look like we in debt the whole nine. He's playing a whole sight game on us, right? Maybe that's a different story for a different day. I say all that to say this. You didn't have time to read and see what's going on in the world. That wasn't your play. Your play is the day-to-day. Even today. And you just work 40 hours.
Well, you get pretty much my point, but where I have to disagree with the brother is every black person wasn't slaves. So when he say you couldn't read, you only read the good book on the plantation, everybody wasn't on the plantation. We saw yesterday, you know, about the Boule people, you know, it was free blacks. It was blacks passing for white. It was all types of things going on in between that people like to, you know, not speak about. But it was free blacks that was born free, that came here free. It was native blacks that was free. So it was people who could read. It was people who had access to books and things of that, black people. We all ain't come from some ignorant slaves that only had the Bible and all. Like that's just some old fashioned folklore. They even say the Vikings came over here, right? When the Vikings came over here, they was Christians. You feel me? So Christians been here, for a thousand years, damn near before these people got over here. So we don't know where it got to around the world. We just listen to what these people keep telling us. People don't know what they talking about. They wasn't even here. Most of them wasn't even here at the time of so-called slavery or at the time of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. Most of these people came from other countries as immigrants and worked their way to the top of the system. Most of our presidents come from immigrant families. Most of our teachers, most of the people who write the curriculums are not from here, and they was not here during those times they write about. They find little stuff from soldiers in the war, and they take things and piece it together. But they only took pieces from the so-called white people and pieced it together, and they left out the history of the so-called black people. And now pieces is peeking out, and things is coming out, and you expect me as a so-called black person from here, America, to go along with the program because it makes you more comfortable. I'm not going to do that, man. Nope. That's what we've been doing.
Hours a week. Many of us don't have the time to dig in those books. So we feel as though when we see a black person say that they're Indian, he's bugging out. He's bugging out like, he hated himself. He don't love his people. He's anti-African. He's ashamed to say his people is from the motherland and that game we be playing. Nah, man, it was some Negroes that was already here. And it's unfortunate because these Negro Indians, these Yamasee, they're still here today. They are still black people here today. You can reach out to them. You can touch them. You can talk to them. They have their reservation, and their reservation telephone number is public information. You can always call up to any of these reservations and call in and say, hey, I just want to talk to so many people. I want to ask some questions. Or better yet, you may want to say, I have some family from South Carolina, and I didn't know that the Yamasee was in South Carolina. You guys was in Georgia. You guys was in Florida and Alabama. I didn't know that. Maybe I need to check a little harder in my genealogy because I may not be off that ship like I think I'm off that ship because there were some of us that was already here. See, what we have pushed back on the Real Black Conscious Forum podcast is this because, see, we're learning, it was more than just one kind of Indian. And, young blood is running around telling people that 90% of all quote unquote African Americans really Indians. See, that's hogwash. No, that's not true. No matter what these writers that we read about these Negro Indians, we learn small pockets now. Small colonies, not whole countries, small colonies, small pockets. But when you look at the Yamasee and you see the military might that they had and how many men was in their army, you say, well, wait a minute, it was more than just a small pocket of them. It was a lot of them. And you got to really ask yourself a serious question and say, okay, when they did that census now, because the United States did census, they kept numbers all the time. You had to ask yourself straight up, hey, what did they put these people down as? What did they label them down as? Because if they label them just as Negro, that's a different story for a different day. Because they didn't say Negro Indian on that census, they just said Negro. And then when they brought Mobutu over here, they put him down as Negro too. So now you got two different type of black folks that's here. Right? So that's going to be today's conversation. I ain't gonna hold you long, something to think about. You got the document, you got everything you need. In the future, though, we're going to have a conversation as well about Canada, right? Because here on Real Black Content Forum Podcast, we always say the Black Aboriginals in Central America, South America, and the islands. Then you got California. Then you got Florida, right? Because Florida is the hub. Even when you find, like we went over a document today to show that the Yamasee was in South Carolina, you eventually see they was pushed down to what we call Florida. So now we got to go a little further north just to prepare ourselves for our future conversation, because what happened in the United States happened in Canada. See, you have a split between the Black indigenous in Canada that was already here, Canada, and then you have the Black African that came over. So now we're going to have to pull out those documents and have that conversation. But you got to be ready for it. You got to be ready to know that, hey, America just wasn't filled with red people. It just wasn't. There were Black folks already here, right? And also, you got to be ready for this, because when we have a conversation about Canada indigenous Blacks, see, those indigenous people in Canada was a little smarter than us in the United States and South America and on these islands, because when that slave trade was in full force, they brought in Black folks from the Caribbeans to do the work up there in Canada. And then later, they start bringing Africans over to Canada as well to do the work. And then they try to label everybody African. So when you look at the history of Canada, you see, no. That brother, that indigenous brother that came from the Caribbeans, he didn't take that African label. He said, no, we not from no Africa. My man Mobutu, he from Africa. We from the Caribbeans. We from the Americas. We was already here. And once we say we from the Caribbeans, no, we wasn't. We just from the Caribbeans. We didn't come over from no. That just don't put that on us. And to this very day, there's a conflict. So you see certain Blacks, they identify as Black Canadians, but that's a split. You got to be careful with that, because when they get down to the nitty gritty, they say Black Caribbean Canadian. And then there's another group of people that say, no, I'm a Black African Canadian. So that's going to be an interesting conversation as well. All right. Peace and Black power to your family.